dear audience, good afternoon. It's our great honor to have Mr. Steve Kim. He's currently the CEO and General Counsel of Strategic Asset Engagement and a board member of Licensing Executive Society Korea. Join us today to share his view of Korean Asian IP market. Thank you very much for joining us, Mr. Kim. Would you mind sharing your experience, telling us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's my honor to be speaking to your audience. My name is Steve Kim. I'm a U.S. counsel who's been working in both United States and in Korea for some time. Been in Korea for about 10 years working in various different fields as counsel for Samsung and as a CEO for an IP management company. Currently, I am a CEO of my own small company that deals with both IP management as well as cross-border litigation and dispute transactions.
Thank you very much for your introduction. Would you mind share your view of the IP market in Korea and given your experience in large companies like Samsung?
Yes. The IP market in Korea and in Asia, obviously, and you've heard so much about it, and I'm sure the audience members are already very sophisticated and educated. It's a very mature and complicated market. So Korea IP market is often dominated by very large companies like Samsung, LG, Hyundai Motors. So that's approximately 70% of the Korea IP market. And I think in other regions, whether it's China, there are some very, very big players. And Japan, where you have more evenly spread out IP market that's shared both by large corporate and small, medium-sized corporations. Korean IP market, however, is very dynamic. It changes all the time because of the large companies that are fighting on a global front on different fields like semiconductor, consumer electronics. So they have a very diverse interest. So it changes all the time. So when I work with clients, when I work with foreign companies, I always tell them to be ready for very quick changes in a very short amount of time.
Thank you very much for very important tips how to deal with business in Korea and Asia. In your view, what are some of the interesting developments in Asian corporate IP market?
Right. So I'll talk about Korea first and then I'll go broaden it out to Asia. So Korea, for the past 10, 15, close to 20 years, has been very focused on 6 or 7 major sectors such as semiconductor, telecommunication. They've been focused on manufacturing. However, that has been changed. So for the past 5 years, large companies, whether it's Samsung, LG, Hyundai, or POSCO, or any other companies, are looking for new business revenue. So for example, so you will see from Korea for the next 5 years, much more concentration on biotechnology, much more concentration on the next level of or next generation display or next generation in terms of healthcare, pharmaceuticals. So new fields, new developments, meaning new IP that is going to come about. A lot of the companies will do a lot of M&A, a lot of mergers, and I think this is a trend that we're seeing in Asia across in general. China, where you have very large and very successful companies that have the capital, are buying companies that are at the forefront of these new technologies. So they are acquiring these new foundation for technology, and they will continue to develop that. So I think for Asia for the next 10 years, you'll see a very, very significant growth in new IP filings in these new very key areas.
Thank you very much for sharing us the future and the current situation of the IP market in Korea and Asia. You are the CEO of your company, and the name is I think it's very singular. It's called Strategic Asset Engagement.
Right.
What does your company do?
My company was actually formed at the request of the clients. The clients kept coming to me personally to advise them on certain IP-related matters, and they wanted to actually, when they wanted to sign contracts, they wanted to sign a contract with a company, not with an individual. So I formed this company. My focus is not necessarily with the very large companies that has a lot of money and that has a lot of different network and brokerage companies that's begging to work with them. My focus is actually with small, mid-sized companies that are looking to branch themselves out in the global market. And I work with them to advise them on how to actually formulate their IP strategy, as well. Because I'm a U.S. attorney, I actually provide them with certain legal guidance in terms of how they should navigate through very complicated markets like United States or Europe, or in some ways, companies that are coming into Asia. There's a very, very complicated roadmap that they have to follow, and every country has a different roadmap. Whether it's Japan is different, Taiwan is different, China is very different than Korea. So I advise them based on my experience in terms of what to do and many times what not to do. And I think that is the more valuable set of guidance that I provide to my clients, in that don't do this, right? Do that, but don't ever do that. And I think they take that much more valuable than what I tell them to do.
Thank you very much for sharing what companies should do and what companies should not do to be successful for their career or for their company development. When you work with the foreign companies in Korea, what do you typically advise them how to conduct business in Asia?
Asia obviously is a new market for a lot of companies, both based in Europe and the United States. But we also have the experience of many companies actually having been operating here in Korea and Asia for many years. So what I tell them in general in terms of entering the Asian market is, number one, have a lot of patience, and expect to actually make the commitment in this market, because you're not going to get much out of it if you're only going to thinking you're going to sit here 1 year or 2 years, 3 years. It's never going to work. Impression is very, very important in Asia. So it's very important that you understand the culture. So even little things like, if you're going to have a meeting with a client, you make sure that you understand who you are meeting. What title does that person have? Do you have the right title, or do you have the person who has the right title to meet with that person at the same level? Or is that person going to be offended if you bring somebody that's too junior, or if you bring somebody who's too senior, is that person going to be, shall we say, scared off, right? So these little cultural differences, it will make and will help you in establishing a bigger presence here in Asia. Asia is very, very technology focused. They're very curious. When you talk to your clients, make sure that you have the necessary information on what other companies have done in the past, because a lot of Korean clients or a lot of Asian clients like to have examples to be told to them, so that they could actually understand how larger companies have operated in the past and what success and what failures they have experienced, so that they could actually replicate that experience as well. Right.
Thank you very much for sharing us how those foreign companies they should start a business in Asia. Do you have any last comments to the audience?
I'm speaking to an audience. I'm sure they are already very educated in IP, intellectual property, and the market and the management itself. I think one of the things that I would like to advise the audience is, if you get a chance, to make sure that you actually learn how to do sales and marketing in this field, because whether you are an expert, whether you are an engineer, whether you are a technologist, or whether you are a lawyer, you are going to be dealing with people at all times. And that means that there is a certain amount of skills, a certain amount of linguistic skills, a certain amount of cultural skills that you need to develop, and that comes with, over time, meeting after meeting after meeting, and you'll meet various different type of people. People with very strong personalities, somebody with very nice personalities. Whoever that you meet, you're going to continue actually develop your own set of skills to do that, right? So I tell the junior lawyers this all the time. Whenever you get a chance, meet with the clients. Meet with angry clients. Better. Because you'll learn how to deal with them, and you'll learn what actually made them so angry, so dissatisfied with your services, so that you do not replicate or duplicate the same mistake again. So that would be my one last comment to the audience.
Thank you very much for your very generous sharing your very important experiences. We hope we have the opportunity to invite Mr. Kim back to share his highlights and his profound experience in doing IP business. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.